There's a new PS5 beta out now. How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is Coco, and this is our channel, PSReady, where we talk about PlayStation. She wants to get down. In today's video, in addition to that PlayStation 5 beta, we're talking about how Sony has admitted that they're printing money, and then things are looking up for one of my favorite PlayStation franchises. It's going to be a fun video. This video is sponsored by Scry and their Arctic PS5 coolers. No matter which PS5 you've got, there's a cooler for you. The Arctic V2 is made for that fat launch PS5, the Arctic S is made for the PS5 Slim, and the Arctic Pro is made for the PS5 Pro. There's a lot of reasons you'll want an Arctic cooler on your PS5, but the biggest one is that a lot of games use Unreal Engine 5, which hammers your components and keeps them running hot. If you have a cooler, you'll get optimal performance at great temperatures, and you won't overheat your console, which is super important. And if you play multiplayer games, you'll love having a cooler on your console because it stops thermal throttling, which means you won't see random stutters and you'll hit every single shot unless you're bad at aiming, in which case I cannot help you. I was playing some Bounty Clash and Hunt Showdown 1896 the other night, and I noticed a real performance improvement when I was using my Arctic cooler. And if you're someone who doesn't like buying hardware multiple times because it breaks down, having a cooler will extend the life of your console by keeping it running at optimal temperatures. The components stay cool, your console lasts longer. It's pretty simple. So when you're ready to grab one, make sure you order it through Scry's website, because if you use the code PSReady at checkout, you'll get an extra $5 off. And the link is waiting right there for you down in the description. As always, huge shout out to Scry for sponsoring this video. But yeah, let's get into this first news story here. It's time to update your PlayStation 5 if you're in the beta. If you've never gotten into a beta, you have to sign up for it on the PlayStation website. Just like Google PlayStation beta sign up, you log in with your PSN, and then once you sign up, you'll get emails that give you voucher codes. So it's not like a thing that gets pushed to your console. You have to actually go to the PlayStation store and type in the same kind of code that you would for a PlayStation wallet card. And once you do that, your PS5 will get a software update. And if you got multiple PS5s like me, I've got a Launch, a Slim, and a Pro, they all get the updates. So it's kind of fun to test out these new features, because unlike everyone else out there, Sony's betas are basically finished. They just want to make sure there's no little stuff that falls through the cracks. And I appreciate that, because they've been having so many issues with the PlayStation Network and everything lately. We don't need more problems on top of that with official software updates. As far as this one goes, it's bringing along a small but cool feature. They're messing around with the activity cards. So now the activity cards, which are being pulled from community data, I guess, because they've gotten worse since Sony started taking community videos to make the trophy cards and stop making them themselves. But what they're doing is making sure that it fills out all the data on the actual cards, so you don't have to click into them. So if the data is there, you'll see all of it. And then if it's a spoiler, it will be marked as a spoiler and you'll be able to unhide it. So it's the same way that trophies work on the PS5 now, where if a trophy is tied to a spoiler in a game, it'll be hidden, and then you can unhide it and see what you have to do to get that trophy. But if it's hidden, it's probably linked to a story part in the game that might be a big spoiler. So I like that, even though everything gets spoiled as soon as the game comes out. Like even a 120-hour game like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, it's been out for a couple of weeks and I've seen stuff from the end of the game. Like I play a lot of video games, but I don't understand how people can get through 100-hour RPGs in 2 days after they come out. You need to do something. I hope you're walking on a treadmill or something while you're playing games, because it's just not healthy to sit for that long. I'd assume that we're going to continue to see smaller updates like this going forward, because at the end of last year, Sony said that they have a team that's small within Sony that's working on the whole software update thing. They look at what the community wants, then they do it, which is why they're bringing back those sweet themes from the 30th anniversary and everything like that. But one of their goals for going into the later half of the PS5 generation is to stop saving up all of the small features and then releasing them in big updates. Since they have the ability to push these updates over the air so quickly, they're going to start doing smaller ones like this one that give you small features at rapid fire versus saving them up for one big update. They've done a couple of these smaller ones and they seem to all work fine. They haven't caused any major problems. So I think whatever strategy they're using right now is working fine. I know things have been rough lately with the PS5 interface, just using the PlayStation Network as a whole. But, you know, as far as the software updates go, I think they've done a really good job this generation, adding in features that people are asking for and not breaking ones that are currently used by people. But yeah, I was able to update to this new software. I played some Bounty Clash on my PS5 Pro and Hunt Showdown 1896, had 0 issues and around 2 or 3 hours of straight gameplay. I got to get back back into Gran Turismo, I have this weird thing like where I get obsessed with it for like 2 or 3 months. I play it every night relentlessly. I grind out all the weekly and daily challenges. I earn credits and get cars. I do builds and everything like that. And then suddenly I just like wake up and I'm not thinking about it anymore. I gotta break that because like when I take a month off from Gran Turismo 7 and come back, I spend a lot of the time coming back relearning how to play the game because, you know, when you're playing a bunch of stuff and you're spreading yourself so thin with so many different types of games, you kind of forget how to play very specific kinds. So I got to be better about that. I downloaded Gran Turismo 4 on my Steam Deck to like kind of fill the gaps in between so I can stay razor sharp when it comes to these racing sim style games like Gran Turismo. But yeah, that's what I've got going on. I got the beta installed. Check your email if you're signed up. And if you're not signed up and you want to test these things out, like I said in the beginning of this story, it is interesting. But that about brings us to the second news story here, which is coming from my friends over at Last Stand Media. I've been on a few of their podcasts like Constellation and Summon Sign a few times. I love the stuff they put out. And one of their recent episodes under Sacred Symbols Plus, which is the extra show you get if you subscribe to their Patreon. I'll talk about some of the smaller stuff later in this segment, but the big thing that came out of it is Shuhei was asked about the PC strategy that Sony has with PlayStation and what the whole goal is there. Like, are they trying to do something like Microsoft where they're putting all their games on other platforms, or is it just a way to continue generating money in the background the same way that they generate money with things like remasters and remakes that they put out all throughout the year? And it's definitely the later, which is good because I don't want to see PlayStation on everything. I want it to be focused entirely on the PlayStation console first and foremost, and then a few months later or a year later they can focus on other platforms like PC. Thankfully, that's pretty much exactly what Shuhei said. Talking about the whole PC release strategy, when it comes to putting them out later, it's basically printing money for Sony. The strategy is they'll release a game on PlayStation like God of War Ragnarok, for example, and they'll wait as long as it takes for that game to slow down enough where they are selling it still, but not making a ton of revenue on it as much as they did, of course, when it came out. And that's the point when they'll release the PC port. So he didn't really confirm this, but we know that The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, which is coming to PC very soon, that's been done for a long time. Like, it's been leaking from people within the studio that ported it, that they've just been sitting on it for a while, and Sony's been waiting for the right time to release it. So they released it on PS5 last year. They were waiting for it to sell through however many copies it was going to sell, and then they put it out at the perfect time right around when season 2 of the show releases. So a lot of people are going to be able to take their PS5 and play The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered on PS5, and people who play on PC and don't have PlayStation 5s, they're going to be able to pick the game up and play it there as well, right when the hype is at its peak during the second season of the show. It makes a lot of sense. He also confirmed that the two markets they're targeting most with these PC releases are the United States and China. The United States is a good one because while PC gaming isn't as big at all as console gaming, it's still growing at a pretty healthy rate. Like, people are building PCs more and more. The lotteries are going crazy for stuff like the 5070 Ti or the 5090 or whatever cards NVIDIA's releasing lately. People are getting into PC gaming more. And what Sony is finding is that there is a group of people that have PCs exclusively. Like, they have a gaming laptop or something that's not amazing, and then they play a PlayStation release like Returnal, God of War, Spider-Man 2 or whatever, and they say, well, that was a really good experience, and if I buy it on PlayStation, I'll be able to play it earlier, and it'll run just as good on a PlayStation 5 or PlayStation 5 Pro, and then they go and pick up a PlayStation 5, and then Sony gets 100% of the money versus 70% of the money, which is ultimately their goal. So that's a good way to keep people moving to the PlayStation market, and then they can capitalize on the people who don't do that by keeping 70% of the revenue they make off of all of those sales. So US is strongly growing, but the reason they're focusing on China with these releases is because it's even more of a growing market, but it's kind of like starting out. So back before the Nintendo Entertainment System came out, people were playing games here in the United States on PC, and that seems to be the stage that China is in, where most of the people there are playing on PC. Like Black Myth Wukong, it sold like crazy on PC over there, but there is a small growing ecosystem of consoles, and the reason it's growing now versus earlier is because consoles in the past had to have weird release strategies there where you have to partner up with a Chinese company to sell the console in China. So like, if you look at the N64, how that was sold in China, it was a completely different console that ran N64 games. Now it seems like they can just sell the regular PlayStation 5 as is in China, so it's growing, which is good. And while they grow out that market, having the games available on PC just helps them sell more games, which then they can take the money and turn it around into making making more games. So the PC strategy has been a little bit on and off with Sony lately. Like some games do amazing, some games don't, but for the most part, I think it's going pretty well and they're learning as they go, which is good. And there were some vindicating moments in this interview for me back when he did the interview with GamesBeat, and he was talking about how Jim Ryan gave him the ultimatum of leave Sony or take the indies job. A lot of websites, I took issue with this, were positioning it as Jim Ryan, like saying, I want you out, so here's a crappy job. He clarified that he saw that as a really good opportunity. It was a job he wanted because he saw that in the PS3 generation and early PS4 generation, Sony wasn't doing a good job with indie developers. They were kind of complaining about Sony and how they weren't getting enough support. So he got to do exactly what he wanted, because if you followed Shuhei on Twitter for a while, he's like a great source of finding unheard of indie games that just don't have a lot of marketing. He has great taste and he understands that a lot of the big mechanics that make their way into AAA games and kind of get out into the general populace of people who don't play indie games, they come from indie games. Like, it's just a thing. So he wanted that job, and he reiterated that he was able to grow the market enough on PlayStation to where it was evenly matched and sometimes beating the Nintendo Switch, which is crazy because when he took over, Nintendo was trouncing Sony in indie sales 5-1, and he evened it out, which is crazy. He also kind of went out of left field and went against people's expectations and praised both Jim Ryan and Herman Hulst. The one thing that I was shocked by is that he's the one who signed Concord to begin with, because Herman Hulst was the one talking about it, gassing it up all the time, treating it like his baby, and Shuhei never really said anything about it, but he's the one who initially signed it. And that might have been a mistake or whatever. I don't really care because it's canceled, it's gone, it doesn't matter, it's in the past. He's the one who played games like Stellar Blade first, went to Sony and said, you need to sign this game. I don't want to go over the whole interview because it's worth paying for and listening to. Colin is a great interviewer. It's 2 hours long. I love Last Stand Media. I am so biased. I have a lot of friends there like Maddie, Dustin, and Brad, and everyone else, like Locke too. Everyone's great over there. I play games with them regularly, so I'm like the most biased marketing tool for them. But when I listen, I really enjoy the content and I think it's worth it. They have a PlayStation show called Sacred Symbols. They have a general game show called Summon Sign. They have an Xbox show called Defining Duke that's run by Maddie and Cog, who I love both of them. They have a Nintendo show called Punching Up. They have a conversational show called Constellation. And then in between, they do shows like where all the shows cross over. They do shows like Sacred Symbols Plus multiple times a week where it's just extra episodes. They work hard to get a lot of content out there, and I think it's great. So definitely check out their Patreon and the full interview. And that brings me to the third news story of this video, which is that it seems like there's some hope for one of my favorite PlayStation franchises, which is of course Days Gone. I'm honestly most excited to talk about this. So the remaster situation, I know people are upset about it, but Sony has been very clear that doing these remasters keeps people employed. There's a lot of teams in these studios that when a game is in pre-production or early production, they don't have a lot to do. And other studios would lay those people off and then bring them back when they're needed. But Sony gives them projects like these remasters to work on in the meantime because they generate revenue that can then be put into the development of said game. And I like the remasters. I played a ton of them during the PS3 generation. I play a lot of them now just because it's nice to see older-ish games with a new coat of paint. So I was already in on Days Gone as a huge fan of the game, and I was kind of wondering if it would be an Uncharted Lost Legacy situation where no one bought it, or a Last of Us Part 2 remastered situation where people really showed up. And thankfully, it seems like Days Gone is doing really well on the PlayStation Store. It's in the top 10 pre-orders on the store, which is crazy. I'm assuming it's because a lot of people already own the game outside of PlayStation Plus, and they saw that it's just a $10 upgrade, and they figured why not throw $10 down to get all the PC features and these extra features like the roguelite horde mode that they're adding in and everything like that. But regardless, it's good because Bend is in a great situation right now that was caused by a bad situation. So since Days Gone came out, Sony has had them working on a live service game that was just canceled because it wasn't coming along. And then suddenly they have a remaster of Days Gone coming out that's selling really well. I feel like now is the time for Sony to greenlight Days Gone 2 and get it into production. As time has gone on and more people have rediscovered or discovered this game for the first time, it's very clear that it is seen as one of the good Sony first-party games that people really enjoy playing. Sony stepped away from it because of the review scores, but I know there were a few reviewers out there who are going to shit on it regardless because of the kind of game it is, you know, an open world game where you play as a dude with a dude best friend and you've got a hot girlfriend and you're riding around a motorcycle killing zombies. Like, you know exactly what kind of reviewer I'm talking about who would hate that. But the other reviewers who would give it a fair shot, they gave it like mid-7 scores because Sony sent it out too early, and then there was was a day one patch that, like, shocker, actually fixed a lot of the problems with the game that it shipped to reviewers with, and then they were already done with the game by the time that came out. So, you know, they didn't get a chance to see it fixed. They gave it a lower score than they probably would have if it was fixed by the time they played it, and then people didn't buy it as a result. But as time went on and they started doing sales, they put it on PlayStation Plus, they put it in PS Plus Extra, they put it on Steam where it's consistently a high seller. It has grown a big fan base in the background, and I feel like now would be the perfect time to capitalize on that. Release the remaster, see how it does, and then turn around and immediately announce a Days Gone 2. Capitalize on it while the hype is high and get people excited for it. I think that would do incredibly well, and it's kind of like the one type of game that I've been begging for from Sony's first party lately. Like, I like all the stuff that's announced between Ghost of Yotei, Intergalactic, and Saros, but like, those are all just going for different audiences than me, and Days Gone is me. Like, that's the game that I really want to see continue at Sony. So then if they do that, then every base is covered, and it'll grow the PlayStation first party ecosystem and recover some of the ground that was lost during this generation. It seems like a total win-win. Anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you in this one. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.